Motivating problem. Is this coin fair? Welcome to this lesson where we will explore a simple but interesting problem. Is this coin fair? Imagine you can come across a strange coin. You assume it's fair, meaning it's equally likely to land on heads or tails. But how can we test this assumption? Let's dive in and see how we can figure out with some basic probability and experiments. You decide to test the fairness of the coin by flipping it 20 times. You count how many times it comes up heads. This is what we call a random experiment. An experiment where the outcome is uncertain and can't be predicted exactly. Definition of random experiment. A random experiment is an experiment where the outcome cannot be predicted with certainty. In this case, you have an intuition. If the coin is fair, it should come up heads around 10 times out of the 20 flips, since heads and tails are equally likely. But what if the result is far from 10? What if you get only 6 heads or even 4 heads out of 20? Does that mean the coin is not fair? Probability and fairness. To decide if the coin is fair, we need to understand probability. Definition of probability. Probability is a number assigned to an event that shows how likely that event is to happen. The value of probability is always between 0 and 1. If the probability is close to 0, the event is very unlikely. If the probability is close to 1, the event is very likely. To test if the coin is fair, we can calculate the probability that a fair coin would give us a result as extreme as what we observe. For example, if you got 6 heads out of 20 flips, you could calculate the probability of getting 6 or fewer heads with a fair coin. If the probability is very small, then it would be reasonable to reject the idea that the coin is fair. But how do we decide what's small? For our experiment, let's say we will reject the idea that the coin is fair if the probability of getting 6 or fewer heads is less than 5%. So how do we calculate the probability? To find out if our coin is fair, we need to determine the probability of getting certain results from 20 coin flips. There are 2 main ways to do this. First is mathematical analysis. Calculate the probability using a formula. And the second is experimental estimation. Conduct an experiment to estimate the probability. Right now, we won't go into the math behind calculating probabilities. Instead, we will estimate the probability using an experimental approach. But instead of flipping a coin thousands of times ourselves, we will use a computer to simulate the process of flipping the coin. So how will we simulate coin flips? Simulating the experiment means that we will use code to imitate flipping the coin multiple times, record the outcome, and repeat this process thousands of times. This will help us get an estimate of how likely it is to get a particular number of heads if the coin is fair. So let's go through with the summary. In this lesson, we talked about how to test if a coin is fair by conducting a simple experiment. We use the concept of random experiments and probability to determine whether the results we get from flipping the coin match what we would expect if the coin were fair. If the results seem too unlikely, we can reject the idea that the coin is fair. To do this, we can either calculate the probabilities mathematically or estimate them experimentally. We will be simulating the coin flips to understand how likely certain outcomes are. Get ready, as our next step will be to start simulating these coin flips to determine if the coin is fair.